Okay, so let's talk about Geoffrey Chaucer. Yeah, I know you've definitely heard the name, maybe even groaned about it back in English class. But listen, there's a really good reason he's called the father of English poetry. And trust me, it's way more interesting than you probably think. So that's the big question, right? Why are we still talking about some poet who died over 600 years ago? I mean, how does somebody become this literary giant instead of just a footnote in a history book? Well, that's what we're going to dig into today. So here he is. This is the man himself, Geoffrey Chaucer. He lived from about 1343 to 1400. And look, to really get his work, you first have to get his world. We're talking about a time of war, plague, just massive social upheaval. And the thing is, he wasn't just some guy watching from the sidelines. No, he was right in the thick of it. And that actually brings us to our first point. See, before he was this famous poet we all know, Chaucer led this surprisingly, well, action-packed life of public service. And that right there is the key. You gotta understand, he wasn't some isolated scholar just scribbling away in a dusty room somewhere. Nope, he was a man of the world, deeply, deeply involved in the politics and the business of his time. I mean, what's so fascinating is just the sheer variety of his career. Just look at this path. He starts out in 1357 as a page in a royal household. Okay, 2 years later, he's a soldier and gets captured as a prisoner of war in France. Wild. Then, by the 1370s, he's a trusted diplomat, getting sent on these secret missions. After that, he takes on this serious money job as a customs controller. And then he becomes clerk of the works, basically managing the king's construction projects. This wasn't some little side gig to support his writing habit. This was his life. This just goes to show how plugged in he really was. Think about it. He didn't just serve one king. He managed to successfully navigate the royal court through the reigns of 3 different kings. I mean, that level of political survival is just astounding. It gave him a total front row seat to the highest levels of power. Okay, so how did all this real-world experience feed into his art? Well, we can actually see it happen. We can trace the evolution of his poetry through 3 distinct periods. It's kind of like watching an artist slowly master their craft. You can really think of it as his path to becoming a master. He starts off with his French period. Then, after his travels, he moves into an Italian period. And finally, it all culminates in his great English period. And that's where he really truly finds his own unique voice. So, how did he do it? How did he learn his craft? Well, he started out in that French period almost like an apprentice, translating popular French works. But then, his diplomatic missions to Italy changed everything. He discovers the giants of the early Renaissance. We're talking Dante, Petrarch, Boccaccio, and boom, his poetry just takes on this completely new level of sophistication, of depth. And so after all that learning, after all that translating and getting inspired by other masters, something just clicks. In his English period, Chaucer finally emerges as a master in his own right. He's ready to create something that is uniquely English and uniquely his own. And what was that great original work, the absolute pinnacle of his career? Well, you know it. It's the Canterbury Tales. And just look at this. This is what it actually looked like, a page from one of the original manuscripts. So this isn't just some abstract idea we're talking about. It's a physical, tangible piece of history. This thing has survived for centuries, and it shows us both the man and his words. So what exactly is it? Well, at its heart, the Canterbury Tales is this brilliant framing device. You've got a collection of stories told by this wonderfully diverse group of pilgrims, people from every corner of medieval society, and they're all on a journey together, heading to a famous shrine in Canterbury. Now, Chaucer's ambition for this thing, it was absolutely staggering. His plan was for each pilgrim to tell 4 stories. Do the math on that. That's a goal of 120 individual tales. Just incredible. So, 120 stories. That was the plan. The reality? He only finished 24 before he died. And yet, even this massive, unfinished work is still considered his masterpiece. That just tells you everything you need to know about the epic scale of his vision. All right, this brings us to our final part of the story, Chaucer's death, and the incredible and maybe even accidental legacy it created. So, on October 25th, 1400, Geoffrey Chaucer passed away. But here's the thing, where he died is almost as important as how he lived. See, near the end of his life, he'd leased an apartment right there on the grounds of Westminster Abbey. And because he lived and died right there on the Abbey grounds, well, he was buried there. And that simple act, just that one burial, started a tradition. His tomb became the very first piece, the nucleus for what we now call Poets' Corner. So think about that. The crucial point here is that Chaucer was the very first writer to be honored in this sacred spot. He's the one who started a tradition that would eventually include these literary giants we all know, people like Charles Dickens and Robert Browning. He literally laid the groundwork for how an entire nation honors its greatest writers. Chaucer's work is this incredibly vivid snapshot of his world, and it's filled with stories that somehow still feel alive today. It kind of makes you wonder, right? 600 years from now, when people look back at our time, what stories will they say that we left behind?